Welcome back to Paranormal Resident and welcome to Paranormal TikTok. Here on Paranormal Resident we have discussed alleged real-life vampires, devil dogs, and creators selling their souls, as well as filters that can detect real-life ghosts. Now we can add alleged immortals to that list. An account called Askavampire has gained 14.2k followers and 183.1k likes for claims that they are indeed immortal. Let's hear from Askavampire at the tender age of 427 all about these extraordinary claims.
So I kind of knew something was up when I was around 50 years old and I still looked like this and I hadn't wrinkled or aged much. But by the time I hit 75, I absolutely knew I wasn't going anywhere for a long time.
Okay, so lots of you have been asking this question over and over, and though I've already explained it, I thought I might as well give you a graph, or Punnett square, of how the genetics work behind becoming an immortal from your parents.
Two mama and papa mortals, however, one of them contains the dominant mortal gene and the recessive immortal gene. Now, when they have children, on average, one of them will be completely mortal and contain both the dominant genes. Now, 50% of them will contain the mortal gene, but they will also have the recessive immortal gene, just like their parents. 25% of the offspring that they have are likely to be immortal, but we can't reproduce, so we can't have more kids, but we are immortal because we have both recessive genes, which means that's the only one we have.
Now, when we do want to age up, we quite often drink the bodily fluids, usually blood, because it's the cleanest, of people whose cells who know how to oxidize and control their Hayford limit and therefore age. Now I like to think that we're all time travelers, just traveling 1 second at a time through the universe.
Welcome to part 1 of the timeline of my life. I was born in 1593 out of wedlock, so yes, I am a bastard. I was born to the second son of a Godolphin family at the time, who were prominent members of the community as they owned a lot of tin mines, and to the third daughter of basically an old line of the Lancastrian family who had sort of gone off to the side and nobody really cared about them anymore. They just had a big nice house, and that is where I lived for most of my childhood. So by 1610 I was 17 years old. I had received good education. I knew how to speak French and English, and I could read and write and everything. I was pretty well taken care of. I thought I had met somebody who was incredibly appropriate for me to marry as well, and I was absolutely smitten with him. Part 2 of my timeline. So the year 1620, I'd been married to John Beale, who was basically the sole heir to the local banking network. John Beale was kind of like, he was beautiful at first, like he was romantic and he was respectful, and he was everything that, you know, a young debutante would want in a potential husband. Unfortunately, I was very carefree and he was very like, let's think about the future. So, slight side note, we were living in Newlyn at the time. So in 1620 in Newlyn, we had this big event, which was basically that there was this ship that everyone knew was heading over to the Americas to establish a permanent colony, and that ship is known as the Mayflower, and it stopped off in Newlyn. And John's friend William Howard went with them, and John felt really left behind.
Timeline of my life, part 3.
So by this point, me and my hubby had we'd had a little bit of disputing, and basically we had become estranged from each other, and that we didn't really talk to each other and treated each other more like friends. This wasn't helped by the fact that I got a lot of positive attention in public from my looks, which didn't seem to be fading. And it also occurred to me that we'd been together for a while now, about 10 years, and we had not managed to have a child. So it's about 1640, just turned, and basically civil war was starting in Britain at the time. Our king had been basically barging around and throwing his weight around in government, and government simply weren't having that. Also, I was supposed to be 50. I was like, what the hell? I'm nearly 50 and I still look like I'm 20-something. Since some successful colonies had been set up in America, I decided to run away.
Life story part 4.
So I was in America at the time. I was currently staying somewhere near New Jersey in this lovely house. However, everyone was super Puritan, and in Britain things were not going quite as well either. There was civil war in Britain, which meant that they couldn't properly focus on governing the colonies. However, everyone's religious questioning settled as soon as they brought in William of Orange and his wife Mary to take the British throne. And this was when I went home again. As here, I spent some time in London. London had become a little more metropolitan and clean at the time, particularly in West London, which was where I stayed with a bunch of writers. And this was when I really got into writing, especially as I was inspired by this woman, Mary Estelle, who wrote a book, or sort of pamphlet, I suppose, A Serious Proposal to the Ladies. Obviously, by this time I had changed identities. I was no longer connected at all to John Beale, which meant that I was a single woman. So, yeah, if I don't age, how do my friends and family not notice? Well, my family are mostly long dead, and the ones I am in contact with know all about it, so it's fine. Look, it's everyone I've ever loved. But honestly, you honestly get used to it. I think people who have felt a lot of grief in their lives will feel that they understand it a little bit more. When lots of people die, you develop coping mechanisms. Personally, death is the end, and it's a shame, but I can always make new friends and remember those who died fondly and be grateful. You make it your mission to make a lot of acquaintances. You will learn a lot of new things, and you never stagnate. You never forget how valuable every single human life can be. So I did spend a couple of months with the Shelleys. Mary and Percy were, in hindsight, and I love this term you guys have coined because it is so accurate, pick me. Let me explain. So there was a reason at the time that a lot of writers, female writers, were using male pseudonyms, pen names. Like the Bronte sisters would use the surname Bell and then just Acton or Ellis, and Emily. Mary was in with a lot of the boys, so she was definitely in the bosom of her friendship group was just men. And that's fine, but she was always like sort of trying to push boundaries on what she could say to shock people and be the most sort of, I guess the Monday term is alternative. Like just listening to her tell stories at fireside in the evenings after dinner was just this experience in the taboo and the occult. Now, normally fathers don't take their illegitimate children on business trips to London with them. However, it was a new century and it was the first opening of Parliament of the 17th century, so my father, Godolphin, and prominent MP for Cornwall, was definitely going to be taking me as a treat. And I went with all of my siblings and my governess Estee. So all I can remember of early 17th century Thames is that it was covered in water lilies and there were otters everywhere, and I could see right to the bottom of it. It was clear as crystal. Now, we were in Surrey, so we were sort of upriver of the main populace of London, and that might be why, but it definitely didn't smell. However, my next proper encounter of being close enough to the Thames to be able to smell it was definitely in the 1800s. People had surged into the city, and the population of London just grew exponentially, and in 1587 they had to redo the entire sewer system because it was that bad.
When asked for proof that askavampire is indeed immortal, such as photographs, this was Askavampire's response.
Okay, so a lot of people ask me for photos of myself, which I can only access through museums or art galleries where portraits are being held. I do not keep photos in my possession. Now, some of you may be like, oh, prove. And I'm not here to prove anything to you. You can ask me questions if you want, but I don't have to prove myself to anyone. That said, I do not keep photographs of my family. I don't keep photographs of old friends or myself because frankly I like to keep renewing and refreshing. If you don't keep moving forward, if you don't keep going on, you break your own heart over and over. You need to could move on. I don't really know what kind of evidence you want me to show you. I can tell you some fun facts, like cancer used to be called the wolf. Yeah.
You know, the skeptical side of me is like, why you lying for likes and views? But then I suppose it's not for me to judge this person, and if they believe that they are immortal, they are immortal. I wish there was proof of it, since, you know, that's what your TikTok is all about. But you know, I'm going to let you live your life and let you guys decide what you think. I want you to leave your thoughts in the comments down below. I'm sure askavampire gets a lot of hate on TikTok, so please don't go send any hate towards askavampire. Even go follow askavampire. I think it's fascinating, talking about the history. And one thing I will add is that when askavampire was responding to questions about what it was like back then, I did do a Google search on each one of them, and it seems that it was repeated back from what I could find on Google, from them time periods and them dates. I don't know if this is like a parody or has hidden meaning to it. Maybe askavampire has a reason for all of this, and it's like a hidden message under the guise of being immortal. But I'll let you guys decide. So thanks so much for watching Paranormal Resident. Make sure you like and subscribe. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and where else? I don't know where else, but just follow me. Okay, thanks, bye.